So, good evening, everyone. I'm David Dawson, Director of the Museum, and I'm going to be talking about the Assize Court project and giving you a bit of an update as to where we are at the moment. Um, the first part of my talk, I'm afraid, for some of you will be old hat. You'll have heard it lots of times before, but I know that there's quite a few people on the call who may not know quite so much about the project. So, just firstly about the museum, it's run by the Wiltshire Archaeological and Natural History Society. We're a charity. We get a grand total of £14,000 in grant from from Wiltshire Council and £4,000 from our town council. So it's quite an interesting struggle, shall we say. The museum's been on the present site since 1874, and as you look at it, you can see there are three different buildings, and there's another two behind. So with five buildings knocked together, 25 floor levels, which, shall we say, it's not quite purpose designed as a museum. We have nationally important collections, and we have a badge from the government to say that. And we've got material, we've sort of got collections which relate to the whole of Wiltshire, not just devices. So we are the museum covering Wiltshire. But of course, we work closely with our colleagues in Salisbury and Swindon at the museums there, along with Poole and Dorset as part of the Wessex Museums Partnership. But of course, we're best known for our archaeology collections, and particularly Bush Barrow, Britain's richest Bronze Age burial. So, on to the Assize Court. Why bother? But I think you'll start to see that as I go through and talk a bit more. Imposing building and been derelict since since it was since 1983, really. So it was built in 1835 by the architect Thomas Wyatt, T.H. Wyatt. This was the first major building that he designed, and he went on to design the second Assize Court and County Hall in Brecon, but then ended up in his career working on over 200 churches, including well over 100 in Wiltshire. At the pinnacle of his career, he was the president of the Royal Institute of British Architects, RIBA. And if you go to the British Museum, and sort of if you look at the British Museum, on the right-hand side, on the corner, there's a wonderful Georgian house. Look closely, and you'll see there's a blue plaque. So that's his house. So it shows how successful he was. So, as an assize court, it was in regular use until 1983, and we've done an oral history project talking to people who remember it in use. You can see that it's called Voices from the Assize Court. You can see that as a series of extracts on the museum website, and also there's a little leaflet that you can buy, a booklet that you can buy as well. Now, it is a grade 2-star listed building. It was writings. So outstanding architectural importance. It was used as the assize court until as a court until 1983, when it was sold by Wiltshire Council and went through multiple owners. It was on and has been on the Historic England Heritage at Risk Register for 25 years since it was established, actually. So its future has always been uncertain. I won't go into the ins and outs of how we got there, but eventually in 2018 it was purchased from the then owner with funding from the Wiltshire Historic Buildings Trust and Robert Hunt Grubb. And interestingly, it was one of his ancestors helped raise the funds to buy the building in the first place. So that meant that it was secured and it was passed into the ownership of a newly founded trust called the Devizes Assize Court Trust. And that's because whoever owns the building has the liability to keep it in good order. And even then, that was £5 or £6 million. So not the sort of liability that I'd want the museum, or any of us want the museum to take on until the money has turned up. So the building itself now is derelict. The fixtures and fittings were removed and sold. And unfortunately, and this was the main problem, is that lead has been stolen from the guttering on the roof. So water has got in. So it's in a real state, as you can see from this photograph. But it still is incredibly impressive as a building inside. And you see here the other court. Sorry, I should say this is the former Assize Court. You can see on the right-hand side the sort of the arch canopy, which is where the judge sat. The the balcony is was for the grand jury. They would hear essentially a small group of magistrates who would hear 10 or 20 cases in a day and decide what to do with them, whether to let them off, issue a small fine, or send them to a full trial. And the Assize Court is named that because a judge would come from London once a quarter and hear important cases, things like major robberies or murder, that sort of thing. And the second photo here, which really does show you how the state of the building. This is what was called the Nisi Prior's Court, essentially a magistrate's court. And you can see stripped, most of the plaster's gone. It's a terrible state inside. It's hard hat territory, and also the walls are painted with lead paint. Because the plaster's come off, the whole building has got lots of lead dust in it, which means that it's not just hard hat and high vis jacket, it's also mask, which takes us back to the days of COVID. Now, we were successful in being awarded funding in 2003 by the National Lottery Heritage Fund, and with funding also from the Devizes Town Council and a range of other funders to develop our plans. Now, the key to making the project happen has always been the National Lottery Heritage Fund. But the way that, and we followed through the way that they work. And there's two things to know about the Heritage Fund. The first is that they're not interested in buildings as buildings. What they want to do is to see people engaging with their heritage. And the second is that they're terrified of risk, which isn't surprising, because they've had people say, "Oh, I've got this great idea. It'll only cost £100." And then they gave them £100 and they come back and say, "Well, actually, it really will cost 300." And you multiply that by millions, and you can see why they want to make sure that everything is sorted before they award the full amount of money. So they gave us 2 years of funding, what's called for the development phase, which means that we've been able to work with architects to develop our ideas for the building. And importantly, as far as the Heritage Fund are concerned, to have as solid a cost as possible, and so that there will be as few surprises as possible as we go forward. And just to run through the plan with you, on the left-hand side, this is the ground floor, and the plan of the building, as you can see, is very simple. Essentially, it's 5 boxes. One at the front left was the jury room, where the jury was selected. Back left was the main assize court. Back right was the magistrates' court, and front right were offices. There was also other bits and pieces, but that's the basic plan, and that's what's left. So in terms of what we're going to do with it, you'll come through the 4 columns at the front, up the steps. If you've got a buggy or have difficulty with the steps, you can come up the sloping floor, as it's called, around the front and in through the double doors to the entrance hall with a welcome desk. The room on the left will be our learning space for schools, and also has independent access so that it can be open out of hours when the rest of the building is locked and alarmed for meetings, art classes, all sorts of other uses. And it has its own loo, and it'll have a tea point, so it can be used for all sorts of things. The former assize court on the ground floor will be our multi-use event space. It should seat 120 for lectures, films, anything like that, but also then craft fairs, all sorts of other activities as well. The green area is new build, filling in what was originally a ground floor building, and this will be our cafe, looking out over the open space at the back, looking out to the canal. The back right will be special exhibition gallery, hosting exhibitions like the one that we had of the work of Eric Revilius a few years ago, and the John Piper exhibition that we have now. And then the room at the front here, this will be the Story of Devices gallery. Now, the flow through the building is quite interesting because we will be flooring in the two main courts. And the visitors who are visiting the museum galleries will go up the stairs or get turned right into a lift here onto the first floor. And so they'll come out here, and this then will be a chronological walk through the story of the county. I'll come back to that in a minute. You go all the way through here and through the doorway here into a stairs and or a lift, which takes you down to the ground floor here, through a small gallery here into the Story of Devices gallery, and from there exit through the gift shop. So fairly straightforward plan of the building. And then we've had some visuals created showing what the building will look like. And so here you have this amazing view of the front of the building. I made the mistake of telling the artist that I wanted some flags, so he went rather over the top on that. But it's a bit of a bête noire that we can't have flags outside the current building because we don't have space, and we would have to have planning permission that we won't be able to get. And it's great to see the school group just waiting to come into the museum. So really, it is a great image. Then at the back, this is where the cafe will open out into the open space at the back, and the canal is sort of behind and to the right of us. So that the open space can be used for performances, and of course, when the weather's great, which like it has been today, you'll be able to sit outside and enjoy a coffee or a glass of something or other with your lunch. And as you can see, the idea is that it should be very clear what is the modern build and what is the historic part of the building, which is essential. And then a couple of views of inside the galleries. This will be the gallery that tells the story of the gold, the story of the Bronze Age, the early Bronze Age, the really important part of our collections. And this is based on the idea of the trilithons from Stonehenge, and using the engravings of William Stukeley in 1740 to give texture to the display cases. And you can see all sorts of interactive things that to help you understand, sort of get across some of the concepts that we're talking about. And then this is the gallery telling the story of devices and its people. Within the center, this is a series of video display, essentially, which will show how the town has grown and evolved over time, highlighting the stories of individual people, the stories of buildings that you can go and see, and then displays telling the story of the town. So the back here will be the story of the court, a banner here created by one of our community groups that we've worked with, and the penny farthing bicycle here, which is we hope will be given to us by a local historian, was owned by the chap who founded Wadworth Brewery. So a great story there. So that hopefully gives you an idea of what we're going to be doing with the building. But now the important thing that everyone asks is, when's it actually going to happen? And as you gathered, this has taken quite a while. In 2019, we'd started working on our initial application to the Heritage Fund, and if everything had worked out, we would be opening the new building next year, or this year rather. We would have been opening it this year. However, we were just starting, sort of gearing up to apply to the Heritage Fund in early 2020 when COVID struck, and that delayed everything by over 3 years. We had that development round I was talking about approved in 2023 and submitted our application for the delivery round. Now, the way the Heritage Fund work is you do all the planning, they give you a grant to help with support the costs of that, and then you make a second application to actually make the project happen, what they call deliver the project. So that was submitted in August. We then had the decision, which thankfully was a yes, in December 25, and we're then on to making the rest of the project work. So what we're doing right now is we're just starting what's called REBA 4 designs. The Royal Institute of British Archaeologists have a whole series of stages in which things happen. So REBA 3, which we completed back in about May or June, essentially is everything you need to get planning permission. So you know what you're going to do, you know what it'll look like, and so on. And so we got planning permission at that point. REBA 4 is the next stage, which essentially is deciding where the power sockets go and that sort of thing. So I'll say a bit more about that in a moment. The other thing we'll be starting on is writing the tender document for the builders. So this, as you can imagine, is a major contract. It's going to be sort of £6 million or thereabout. So it's not the sort of thing you just sort of sidle up to someone and say, have you got time next week to start on this? This is a full open procurement run following a carefully laid down procedure to ensure that we get best value, the contract is as rock solid as it can be, and so on. So that's not a quick process. The aim is to get that tender completed in July or August, responses back in October, and awarded the contract shortly thereafter, and for construction to start in early 2027. That's when you'll see scaffolding go up. Now, in the meantime, we'll also be doing what's called enabling works, very posh term, but really it means doing a few things in advance. Two main things. The first will be to put up more permanent hoardings to protect the building, to protect people, and also then to strip off some of the tarmac and concrete, particularly at the back of the building, and to strip out some of the lead paint dust from inside the building. What that will do is ensure that we know that if there are any nasty surprises, particularly at the back of the building, that we find them out now rather than finding them out when the main contractor starts work and having to stop work for a couple of months while they deal with an oil spillage or something like that. So you will see some work happening in the summer, but that's not the main works. Those start in 2027, and our architects Purcell think that will last 18 months. Once that's completed, we then start the fit out, including installing the exhibition. So in the meantime, of course, we'll be researching the stories of the exhibition, selecting objects, and doing writing panels and captions and all the detailed work that goes on behind the scenes to make the whole thing happen. So we're expecting that will take another 18 months or so, possibly a bit longer, and we will then, if all goes well, open in 2030. Now, at the same time, we are going to be reusing some of the display cases that are in the current museum, particularly those in the prehistory gallery, the ones that have been were installed in 2013. Those will go off to be refurbished, but then we have to take the objects out of those cases, pack them away very carefully, send the cases off. They then have to be installed at the Assize Court, and then the objects put back. So it's quite a, as you can imagine, quite an involved process. But that means from probably early 2028, we will be starting to close some galleries at Long Street. But we'll be do our best to keep things ticking over there. We'll be still having some of the displays will be able to open all the way through because we're not reusing the cases. We will have our special exhibition gallery where we'll carry on with the special exhibitions, and we will still have our lecture room. So we'll still be able to do education work and have lectures and events and so on. So all of that will carry on as normal as possible until we're able to switch over to the Assize Court. So that's the plan. You may have seen that we were very fortunate that Her Majesty the Queen agreed to become our royal patron in the autumn, and then she visited the museum in January to celebrate the success, our success in being awarded £8.5 million by the Heritage Fund. And you see her top right, you see the Queen talking to Taryn Nixon, who's the chair of the London and South panel of the Heritage Fund, and also talking to the deputy leader of Wiltshire Council, who have been invaluable supporters of the project. Bottom left, on the left, is Caroline Kay, our chair, and Peter Troughton, who is the chair of the Devices Assize Court Trust. And on the right, you see the Lord Lieutenant watching the Queen sign the visitors book, along with Nicola Trowell, who is the program manager who's running the project. Since January, we have also done a couple of other things, which is that we have signed the lease for the building. So although the building is owned by the Assize Court Trust, the museum now has a full repairing lease for 200 years at a peppercorn rent. So essentially the building is now ours. We're responsible for it now that the money is there to get going on restoring it and creating it as the new home of the museum. So that's been quite a landmark. And the other is that we have formal permission from the Heritage Fund to start the project. There's a series of hoops that we had to jump through that we've done. So, or boxes to tick, depending on which simile you like to use. And here we have the budget in broad terms of what, where how much it will cost and where the money will go. And as you can see, the building itself is £7.3 million, of which about 5.5 or 6 is pure repair costs. And that's a question of repairing the roof, putting back the lead, it won't be lead, but putting back the rainwater goods for the guttering to make sure that the building doesn't continue to deteriorate, putting in new floors. We'll have an air source, the heating will be air source heat pump. We will have PV cells, solar panels on the roof, and we will be taking rainwater from the roof will be discharged into the canal. All of those things to minimize the environmental impact of the building. So you can see there a lot of things in there. £1.4 million to cover inflation. Hopefully that will be enough, though we'll have to see what the current, shall we say, global uncertainty will bring us, and contingency of 1.7 million. That's based on the experience of other similar projects. So that's a cushion in case we find things that we're not expecting. So that's the budget. And then the other question is, well, how much money have we got? And the answer is we have 95%, over 95% secured. Forget the negotiation bit, it's secured. That's around £14 million. So a shade, well, 8.45 million from the National Lottery Heritage Fund, and then you see a list of some of the other funders, as you can see, an impressive list. But also in there is a £2 million loan guarantee or underwriting from Wiltshire Council. So that's reassures the lottery that the money will be there to complete the project, but we still need to raise that. So we now have 2.7 million left to raise. So we will be putting in applications. We are talking to organisations like Historic England, the Arts Council, and the Architectural Heritage Fund. We're talking to even more philanthropists than have helped us so far. And we will be running a major community fundraising campaign, probably nearer towards the end of the year. Now I'll just pause for a moment. And this is to update you on some of the work that's just literally just kicking off on that REBA 4 stage. This is where the plug sockets go, if you like, the real detail. And what I'm showing you here was sent through by our architects on Thursday. And my colleague, many of my colleagues haven't seen this yet, will be having a briefing from the architects tomorrow. So you're getting to see it before many of my colleagues. And the aim of this look and feel is that the architects have been thinking about the building, how it's designed at the moment, or the design work that's been done so far, and now taking it to the next stage. And the starting point was the collections, what we have in the collections, and how the building and what the building looks like, to give an idea of look and feel. And then they've taken that through to see how each of the main spaces will look. Now, the display gallery is on the first floor. That will be covered by well, there'll be display cases in there and graphics and all sorts of things, if you remember those visuals. So they're not worrying about those. What they're worrying about is the spaces, particularly on the ground floor, that will be used for other things. So in terms of the multi-use event space, what you see here is what designers called a mood board, giving an idea of the sort of textures and colours and so on that will follow through into the development of the space. And this is an idea of what the main event, the multi-use event space will look like. As you can see on the here, these are views of the wall, each of the walls. So here, this is a cross section lengthwise, and so here you have the judge's throne, and here paneling in the wall, and a big door here. And here, this is where the paneling is suggested as being like this. And the floor, interestingly, the floor will have designs set into it, showing where the witness box was, which would have been roughly there, where the jury box for the 12 members of the jury, the ordinary jury was down here, the dock here with a trapdoor leading to the cells underneath, and on the side wall here, shadow of where the public gallery was. So the idea is that within the multi-use event space, you will still be able to read how it functioned as the Assize Court. And then looking at the shop and reception area, again, same principle of a mood board showing things that have inspired them, things that they think that might be the sort of thing that we will want to see. And you see here a possible layout of the shop and reception, with a reception desk here and various parts of the sort of shop furniture. Now, as soon as I saw this, I was thinking, yes, but the whole point of this piece of work is to get us thinking and talking about making it real. So instead of just being a room labeled shop and reception, okay, what does that mean? What do you need in there? How are the shelves going to work? How tall are they going to be? Where's the storage going to be? It's really concentrating down on the detail that's going to be needed to design all this. And then they've also created for us some visuals. Now, again, because these are computer generated, they look much more finished and sort of signed off than they really are. these are ideas to get us thinking rather than anything sort of a final polished design, which is almost as they look. And they've been really quite creative with this because you see these blue wall units and the different coloured bits here. Now, what they wanted to do was to make sure that we could clear the shop away to open up this space completely, and for as much of the shop to disappear away as possible. So this sort of, I guess it's pink unit would slide into here. These doors would open. The pink unit would slide in. Then the brown this brown table would then slide in above that unit, and then this yellowish one would turn through 90 degrees and then slide on top, which means that the whole of this unit would be flush and the whole of the floor space would be open, which is a really amazing idea. So we'll have to see whether we still like that and whether how practical that is. And then the next space is the learning centre. And again, this is a mood board throwing in some ideas of how this might work, with some colours and textures and sort of picking up ideas like the rounded head of the door, which matches those in the Assize Court. So you see some really interesting things here. And the other thing is that our architects per cell have done a whole range of museum projects. And so they have seen the guidance from organizations like the Claude Duffield Foundation, who have provided guidance on learning centres and how they should work. Again, based on what experience. And again, this is a plan showing how that would work. We the idea is that we'll be able to seat 30 or so children in a lesson. As many of you who visit the museum or know the museum will know, 30 is fairly standard, 60 is not unusual, and our record is 90 children at one go, which in our current lecture theatre, a lecture room, is a complete nightmare. And just to give you an idea of the space, our current lecture room is just slightly more than half of the space in our new learning centre. So it's almost twice the size of our current lecture room. And what the architects have done is work out ways of creating storage space. So not shown in this diagram, but because of the way the stairs work, here, at the back here, there's a void. And this is space where the chairs and tables can be put away, leaving the whole of this space open. So they've been really inventive of thinking about how storage will work. And here you see views of how those units will work, and again a computer visualization. So it really shows how this might work to make it real for us. And the challenge now is to see whether this actually will do what we need, will do what we want. And if it doesn't, how we change it, how we add. So this really is a starter for 10 onto how we're going to make it real. And then the cafe. This is the fun one. Again, lots of look and feel diagram images, including showing how the brickwork can be made to be a real feature, because in where the space is at the moment, there were ground floor rooms. There was a judge's room, an office for legal teams, and a waiting room for the witnesses. And there were various fireplaces and things like that. So the brickwork is really quite interesting, but really quite an interesting texture, and will be the one place where you will still be able to read the fact within the building. You'll be able to read the fact that it was a brick, or that it is a brick building. And then they've worked on the plan. If you were looking very carefully at the previous one, the full-size ground floor, what they were suggesting was a kitchen which was about this sort of size. But they've thought again, looked at other places, and come up with this as a possible one of a number of possible layouts, with a preparation area down here, a serving counter, production kitchen, and a cold store out the back, with cozy seating, as they put it, sort of sofas with a view out towards the canal. More formal seating here, so you can sit down and eat, knife and fork sort of thing. More cozy seating, and then workspaces. The idea of this is digital natives who can sit on their laptops at a desk, sort of hot desking, and then a buggy space down here. So, as I say, this is brand new to us, and is the whole idea is to get us thinking about how this would work. But we have to think about things like this. They've come up with this plan because, for example, this doorway here will go through into our exhibition space. And this is the widest access that we have into the building. So if we're going to need to bring crates in or something like that, they will almost certainly have to come through this door. So we have to make sure that it's easy to turn here if you've got a 10-foot long crate with a painting in, for example. So these are the sorts of things that we now have to go away and think about. And then ever important toilets. Lots of images here of toilets. I rather like this bathroom. I could do with a bath like that, but I don't think we'll get one. And they've been looking again at the plans for the toilets and to see how that would work. And one of the things that is really important is that there will be a changing spaces toilet, a changing places toilet. One of those, what that means is that it's a space where an adult who has special requirements, they can use the toilet facilities, but they can also be showered and or changed. So it needs a lot of space and specialist hoists and things like that. So we're lucky that we've been able to create that space. So this will be the only changing spaces toilet within easy reach of Devizes Town Centre. Hilworth Park has one, but that, of course, is a distance away, not within walking distance. And then lastly, the stairs on the stair turret at the back. Again, we will have to think about how that works. And one thing I really have in mind is that it will be on those stairs where we'll recite our Piper window. So we have to make sure that whatever the stairs look like, that it matches, it works with the John Piper window. So, as I say, this is very much work in progress. This is brand new, and so it'd be interesting to hear what you think. So that's everything I wanted to say. And so I'm very happy now to try and answer any questions. Now, if you'll forgive me, because as I said before we started this, I've had a cataract operation, which means my eyes work in very different ways, and I have to squint at the screen through a pair of glasses where I've got one lens blacked out. So there we go. So if you would like to use the Q&A button to ask questions, please. I see there's one on the chat, but if you could use the Q&A button, that would be very helpful, which is architects. So the architects, we have an architectural team, which is led by Purcell. They are Bristol-based, or their Bristol office. They're a national set of architects. They've done a wide range of museum projects, including the Shoemakers Museum, recently opened at Street. That's the Clark's Village, Clark Shoemakers, which I went to on Friday this week. Closer to home, they were the same architect, Claire Phillips, that we're working with as the lead architect on the building, and Alistair Ferguson. They did the old town hall in Trowbridge. So if you go to the Trowbridge Town Hall, the old town hall, you'll see some of the same things that they've used that experience to bring through into our project. So on the Q&A, Kate has said, "Have you found dry rot?" The council found dry rot in the 1980s. So dry rot has been there. Thankfully, there's been no major outbreaks since, but in about 3 years ago, there was a door that had been stored in one of the in a passageway of the cells, and that had started to get dry rot. So that's been disposed of. So hopefully, no more than that. But dry rot is an interesting beast. So it's there's always a risk that it will come back. Anonymous has said, will you be recruiting staff and volunteers to deliver the project? What's the timing of this and how will the recruitment be done? We've already we recruited a project engagement officer and project support officer in the development round. So that's sort of 2.5 to 2 years or so ago. That was Helen Meikle and Claire Slack. They continue in those roles during our delivery phase, and they will be joined by so there'll be uh, we're sort of moving people around in the museum, so we'll have dedicated adding extra staff time to work on developing the interpretation and looking at the objects. And then we have just recruited a marketing and events officer. Those were recruited through the museum website, the museum's job page, social media, and posting on places like LinkedIn. And we've also recruited a new finance officer um, because our previous finance officer has retired, and they've been recruited on a 4-day contract rather than a 2-day-a-week contract, with those extra 2 days supported by the Heritage Fund. So that team is in place, and we have just had proposals back for a what we're calling a capital works manager, but if you're in the if you're in the sort of the building trade, what's called a client-side project manager, and that will be someone or a company that is highly experienced in running building projects. So, they'll wear the t-shirt on bashing the main contractor around the head and making sure that all the costs are controlled. So that has been out for open tender. We've had 7 responses back, and we'll be interviewing next week to decide who to appoint. And then we will be appointing in due course, we will be appointing some extra members of staff to help with the decants, taking objects up from displays at the moment, packing them up, and then putting the new objects, taking them over to the Assize Court and putting them in the display cases, and also doing extra research and that sort of thing. So quite a busy period. And I think it's Tina has said, what will the total exhibition space be relative to the current? The answer to that is roughly 20% extra display space. But the key is not the floor area. The key is that it's more usable, because in the current building, we have lots of small spaces, apart from what's now the prehistory galleries. And you can see how the prehistory galleries, you have a really good route through, whereas the others, you have to go sort of round cases and you go into rooms and out of rooms. It really is we we waste a lot of space in there. So we will get more space, but the real gain from the project is the public areas, the multi-use event space, where we'll go up from being able to seat, say, 60 people, 70 at a real push, to 120, and having a dedicated learning space, which will be able to seat 30 easily, 60 at a push, and we'll be able to cope with 90 in a way that we can't at the moment. And then a cafe, which is anyone who knows us at the museum knows that that's the number 1 request from people. Oh, and I should say, that's a good point, is that access from the front of the building through into the reception area, the welcome desk, and through there into the cafe and out to the outdoor space. Everyone will be able to walk through there. That will be a public space. Everyone will be able to walk through there. We will make a charge for people who are visiting the displays and the exhibitions because we still have to metaphorically pay the rent. But access to the core part of the building will be free. And then Catherine has said architects was in reference to you saying archaeologists rather than architects in Reba. Okay, well, my mistake. Um, the site is it's a brownfield site. We know that from test pits and so on that there will be no archaeology there. John has said, "Are the prison cells of any interest for the building?" Yes, I forgot to talk about that. Um, there are cells under the back part of the main assize court. There are what, four individual cells and a larger, so communal cell. Now that larger cell will be given over to air source heat pumps and some of the air handling plant and things like the plant and so on. So we won't have access there. But if you remember the stair turret on the right-hand side, there will be stairs there down into the tunnel that leads under the magistrate's court, under the what will be the cafe, and then out to the cells under the back part of the main assize court. We won't be able to offer regular public access there in the sense we won't be able to let people wander. However, that's an obvious place where we'll be able to take people for guided tours and volunteer-led tours. Sorry, and I remembered I hadn't answered part of a question earlier, which is about volunteers. And at the right at a point, we definitely will be putting a call out for volunteers to work, particularly with engaging the people who are going to be coming to the building. And one of the key priorities will be to work with our local audiences of people who don't visit the museum at the moment. And we very much will be targeting them to encourage them to visit the museum. And we will be recruiting volunteers to help with that. So hopefully that's answered John's question. And Chris has said, I missed the start. Is there anything practical ordinary members can do to help write reports, carry stuff, research, promotional activities? And the answer is yes, not yet. We'll be gearing up for that. We're literally just starting with sort of gearing up with the architects and that sort of thing. As we go through from towards the autumn, from then we will be starting to ask for help and we will need lots of help. So I'd be very grateful for those who can offer. Adrian has said, looks excellent. Well, that's good to know. Oh, what will happen to the Long Street buildings? Yes, good question. You may remember I showed you the front of the buildings, and there's Georgian townhouse on the right, one on the left, and the Victorian stone entrance in the centre. Once the Assize Court is opened and we get over that shock, we will then the plan at the moment is that we will move the collections that are in the left-hand building. That's the library, and also there's a cellar there full of archaeological material. We'll move that into the other part of the building, and then we will be able to. We'll probably release that, probably sell it off as a house. But then the rest of the building, the other four bits of the building, will then become a collections discovery centre. Now, it's a posh phrase for a museum store, but it will have proper research facilities, and we will also be able to base members of staff there, and potentially we'll have office space that we can work alongside partner or sort of similar organisations, similar charities, and we will also be able to keep the lecture room for use for things like workshops and training, and perhaps those other organisations will have meetings and that sort of thing. So it adds another string to the bow. But bear in mind that we'll be if all goes well, will open at the Assize Court in 2030, um, I will I will no longer be here then. So that will be for my successor to lead on, because that won't be happening till 2032, 33, 34, something like that. So that's quite a way away, because of course we can't do anything until we've got the Assize Court open. Um, is there still a plan to install a footpath from the Wharf car park to the rear of the Assize Court building? And the answer to that is yes, but don't hold your breath. Um, as you'll know, that the former Wadworth brewery site is being redeveloped, and part of that includes a pathway along that part, joining up with the pathway that has been reserved along in front of oh, I've forgotten the name of it. It's not Anstey Court. It's the other one. I can't remember the name of the McCarthy and Stone development, the flats by the Wharf car park. There's space also to come in front, just about to come in front of the canoe club, and then there's a small bit in front of the flats at Dundas Court, and then there's a small bit owned by the Kennington Avon Canal Trust, that hopefully that they would allow the towpath to come that side, and that will create a really nice walk through to the Wharf car park, which is where we imagine most of our visitors will park. We won't have any visitor parking on site. There's not space for that. And Michelle asked about the current building, so I hope I've answered that. Kevin has said, for the extra 2.7 you need, have you asked English Heritage to help out too? Right. Um, English Heritage, as was sort of 10 years ago, has been split into two. So there's the English Heritage Trust, which runs Stonehenge, and that is a charity, and they have no government grant. So English Heritage, English Heritage as runs Stonehenge, is in the same situation we are, which is using income from visitors and members and so on to pay the costs of preserving and looking after their portfolio of historic properties and archaeological sites. So they're in the same boat that we are. The other bit, the bit that is government funded and has grants to offer, are Historic England. And the answer to that question is absolutely. Historic England have supported the project so far. They supported emergency repairs a few years ago, and we are talking very actively to them about a grant bid to support the project. That's why you didn't see English Heritage on my list of people we're after, but you did see Historic England. Kate has said, really love the idea being developed, conclude the function of the Assize Museum exhibitions. Well, I see you've included the history of devices. To what extent will it function as a local history museum? Second question, will you add to the natural history function of years gone by? On the first floor, the first element will be the natural environment of the county. So the answer is yes, but it won't be an extensive display, basically because we don't have the collections. We have some, but not much. And so there will be some there to answer that bit. And the devices gallery on the ground floor will tell the story of the town. So the first floor will tell the story of the county, the ground floor will tell the story of the town. So hopefully that makes sense. In a sense, the same as we do at the moment. Oh, lots and lots of questions. Susan has said, just joined the museum, so haven't yet had the chance to look at any of your displays. Well, I hope you do. Will you be advertising when and which rooms are to be closed? And the answer is yes, when we got that detail of the program, but that's not going to be for a couple of years. So don't panic, but do come and enjoy the displays while you can. I think we'll probably start to close displays in 2028, so a bit away yet. Simon said, where will collection items not on display be stored? Well, I sort of answered that, which is in the Long Street, because we don't have the space for storage at the Assize Court, and we also have two off-site stores at the moment, one of which provides for about 20 years of future excavations. Tina said, with a move, it's an opportunity for modern digital display presentations. Do you currently have plans for this? And the answer is yes, but we're not going to go overboard with that because I've seen displays that don't work. I've seen displays that give up the ghost after a few years, and people have spent a shed load of money on something that becomes obsolete. So it'll be measured. And the other thing is people are visiting a museum to see real things. Digital experiences, fine, but that's on top and addition. What we will be doing, and when we've got the staff resource, because I've already trialed this, is we'll be using a mobile-based app called Bloomberg Connects, which will give you much more information about the objects. There'll be a QR code or location-based thing where you'll be able to zap something, and you'll be able to see video, sort of hear audio on your Bluetooth headset, or watch videos, telling you more about some of the objects and giving you that sort of richer story. So that's how we'll do it, rather than by having screens everywhere. Because the other thing is, if you're trying to impress a teenager, you have to be better than a PlayStation 6. And can we afford that budget? Probably not. Will my successors be able to afford that budget 10 years into the new displays? The answer to that is a very resounding no. So we've got to design for what will be robust and deliverable in 10 years' time with old technology. Joy said, suggestion more than question. The staircase photos worry me. Many people need handrails on both sides, one for up and one for down. People on will be going down, not up. But you're right about two handrails, and they show. Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing that worries me is several of them showed open stairs, which I think would be very disconcerting, sort of open treads, sort of gap between the treads. So yes, remember what I've shown you is something to provoke us, to get us thinking, so we can be talking about exactly that. We also have a focus group, or we work with a number of community groups, one of which includes a number of people who will be able to pick up that sort of thing, have lived experience of disability. But all of us, I'm at the moment, my eyesight's all over the place, so I know I don't like open stairs, and I find that a bit disconcerting. So, but the answer is absolutely. So thank you for that. Andy has said, thanks for the detailed and interesting update. On the project will include much greater overhead costs. Have these budgeted within the extra project? And how is extra funding, how is it going to work? Yeah, okay. I've seen there's a number of museum projects that have gone terribly wrong, and we're trying to learn, and we've learned from those experiences. The running costs will hopefully will be minimised. Air source heat pumps, solar panels, and the like, especially lots of insulation, which we don't have at the moment. So and we've costed what that will be. We've done a full business plan projection. We're going to have to work hard, but we have done those projections, and they withstood the test of our the assessors of the National Lottery Heritage Fund. So it's all fingers crossed. I'm not going to guarantee it. We are projecting going from 8,000 visitors to our baseline, our base uh, scenario is 14,000 visitors. So it's not as though we're suggesting going from 8.5 to 85,000 visitors to generate the income. So it is, we've done the best we can, and we will continue to maintain those who review the business modelling. We work with an experienced business plan consultant and an advisory panel as well. A couple of people have asked about the current building, so I think I've answered that. Catherine said, will there be a cloakroom deposit bags as in the Ashmolean? Not a dedicated one. There's a space, you may have noticed in where the loos are, there was a row of cupboards, and those would be cloakroom and lockers. But whether we like that or not, the jury is out because I might prefer that space for something else, or we might. So, but we will certainly have some place to leave bags. Uh, Keith has said, will the cells be adapted for storage? The answer is no. One, as I said, the large one will be for plant. The smaller ones will be telling the story. We'll use that to tell the story of some of the people who were tried in the court. Um, I think it's Listen has said, is this project the highlight of my career? Oh, blimey. Well, what a question. Um, Possibly, but I don't think of it that way. My career has been rather weird, so a number of different highlights and lowlights. Kind of you to suggest that it might be. Certainly, yeah, yeah. Okay, I'll take the fifth on that. Catherine has said, what's happened to the building? Done that, hopefully. Um, Question from Terence Meaden. Very well presented, David. Hope to eventually visit. I've become a wheelchair case in recent years. Will there be a blue badge parking space on site? Yes, there will. At the back, there will be a single blue badge space, and we'll be able to, that can be reserved. There are some um, currently opposite on Northgate Street, there are some standard parking spaces on street. There's some on street parking. We will be trying to yeah, encourage the council both to put in a zebra crossing there and also to convert at least one of those spaces into a blue badge space. So very important. Uh, Penny has said, "How does the Wadworth development affect the plans?" The keys there, and I'm conscious I've got loads of questions. I've been talking for hours, so people will get bored. Um, the the advantages are that it gives a route through, a walkway through from the Wharf car park, and also to the side of the historic Wadworth Brewery buildings, where there should be a zebra crossing from the marketplace. You come down the marketplace to the end of the Wadworth buildings, across the zebra crossing, and through to the back of the Assize Court. So that's the pluses. Um, Catherine has said, "Oh, there's another question on the chat." Um, oh, Chris, I think that's Chris again. Are you perhaps missing out on willing volunteers or able to significant professional help in moving the project forward? We've already had, well, if you'd like to volunteer, please do, and you have skills, do let me know. We benefited from a wide range of people who have supported the project. So we have someone with construction experience, including rebuilding Windsor Castle after the fire, for example, and people who have had senior positions in heritage organisations in other parts of the country. So we have benefited from volunteers in all sorts of ways and continue to do so. Our trustees and the trustees of the Assize Court, they are all volunteers and they have given very freely of their time and expertise. So yes, but we're always open to if you've got skills. I'd love to hear from you. The issue is that when you're doing sort of planning, then you need the people to be involved in planning. That's very different to doing. And so we will be moving into doing phase once things really get moving. But of course, unless you're a skilled stonemason or bricklayer, there's a limit on that, what can be done there until the construction work is finished. So it depends, it's sort of horses for courses. Um, I talked about engaging communities as well, and that's going to be really important and a great place where people can help. I hope that answers that. Um, and Tina said, please see my earlier answer question, the opportune mon display options. I think I did answer that, hopefully. And yes, we do have plans. Um, Terence has said, oh, about visiting. So I've, with the wheelchair, I said that. And John Peverley said, is a landscaping plan being prepared for design of the garden at the back? And the answer is yes. I forgot to include it. There is a plan which basically is having planting around the edges, the sort of hard surfacing in the center, so it can be used um, uh, for performances, for example, or as some of my colleagues say, for a gym bar and mobile um, pizza van. So we can bring those onto the site. And then around will be planting to encourage, particularly to encourage butterflies, for example. We also have bats in the building. And so they're thankfully, in construction terms, thankfully, they're hibernation roosts, not maternity roosts. So there will be essentially bat roosts built within both the roof and also parts of the there'll be space for them in the one of the cells as well. So biodiversity is an important element of the project too. So I hope I've answered all the questions. We still have 48 people on the calls, which isn't bad for the amount of time I've been rattling away. So I hope that's been helpful. If you have any thoughts or anything else, any other questions you have that come up, then do let me know. We will be doing things like this regularly to keep people up to date with where we are with the project. And you can also join the museum email newsletter. Just email us on hello@wiltshiremuseum.org.uk to be placed on our email newsletter. Oh, sorry, I see there's a new question just arrived. Oh, no, many congratulations, bring the project to the exciting stage. Well, there we go. So patiently, bloody minded might be another way of phrasing it, but there we go. So with that, thank you very much for coming, and I hope you found that interesting. I will be putting a recording of this up online when you look at our website, you'll see there's a tab for Assizes. This talk will be recorded and placed up there. So if there are people you're talking to who are interested, you can share that link with them and tell them where to go and where to find out more. So with that, great, thank you, and very good evening. Goodbye.